y'all, it's Ashley at Bookish Rum, and I am back with another video. As you can see from the title of this video, I am here to recommend you some books that you probably have never heard of. So what I decided to do with this video is compile a list of some of the most obscure titles of books that I have ever read, and all of these books have under 1,000 Goodreads ratings and reviews. Some of them are like right underneath 1,000, and then others are definitely in the lower range, meaning that they only have like 5 ratings, with me being one of them. So before we get started, I actually wanted to do an unboxing. So for the month of November, I am working with Book of the Month to show you their November titles and talk a little bit about what Book of the Month is. What's really cool is I already have a Book of the Month subscription, so I was very excited to learn that I would have the opportunity to work with them this month to showcase their books. If you didn't know, Book of the Month is a super popular and fast growing online service for readers. Their mission within their company is to promote new and emerging authors and to help readers discover books that they'll love. One of my favorite aspects of Book of the Month is that they are diverse, not only in the genres that they choose. They have everything from contemporary to thriller to fantasy to nonfiction, but they also make sure they are diverse in the authors that they're choosing, which is super important to me as a reader. You all know that I am very into making sure that I have diversified my reading as much as possible. So the way that Book of the Month works is that each month they vet through hundreds of titles and they come up with a curated list of books for readers to choose from. That way we as readers don't have to necessarily do the research. There are 5 books to choose from for each month's picks. And what's so cool about these titles is that they're new or they're early releases. So you do get the opportunity sometime to actually read books prior to their release date. One of the greatest perks of Book of the Month is their skip policy. So what you can do is, if you do not like any of the selections that they have picked for that month, you can skip and not be charged for skipping that month, which I think is really awesome because it makes them a risk-free company. And one of the other greatest parts of Book of the Month is that it is $14.99 a month, which is significantly cheaper than what you would typically pay for a hardcover new release. So it is amazing that you can get a book that traditionally would probably cost anywhere from $28 to $32 for $15 a month. If you want to, what you can do is there is a code that you can actually use to get your first book for $9.99, and that code is SAYBOOK, and I will make sure that I leave that information down below, which is a great option to try out Book of the Month and get a hardcover new release just for the price of $9.99. Okay, so now I am going to open this up and go through the selections for the month of November. All your books will come in this blue box that says Book of the Month. So it also comes with a bookmark in each box, and the bookmark for this month is Leave Me to My Books, which is so me. This is so me. I'm very much so just, everybody just leave me alone, leave me to my books, let me read, which I love. Y'all know I'm a bookmark collector, so I actually have quite a few of these Book of the Month bookmarks, so it's just another one to add to my collection. The first book that we have here is The Star-Crossed Sisters of Tuscany by Lori Nelson Spielman. And if you didn't know, all of the Book of the Month books actually come with the special covers that have the Book of the Month marking on the spine. And then I think that this is really cute is that on the back of each book they actually have the date and the year, and then they have Book of the Month in a heart, and I think that's really cute. So this appears to be a contemporary book about a family that is cursed. Every second born sister in this book is doomed to never find love. So there are 2 individuals in this family that actually end up traveling to Italy to hopefully break the curse. And this sounds like it's going to be just a fun contemporary book. I think the cover is absolutely beautiful, and I have not read a book in a while that actually takes place in Italy. The next book that I have here is Memorial by Brian Washington. This is the same author of Lot, and Memorial is about a couple, one that is Japanese American, another that is Black. They've been together for a while, but they've come to this point in the relationship, kind of a rut, where they don't even know why they're together anymore. And this is about an exploration of family and relationships, and I think culture, and learning more about yourself, because Mike is one of the characters in the relationship who actually ends up having to go back to Japan after his father is on the brink of death, and his significant other, his partner, ends up having to live with his mom. And I think that that's going to be a very interesting and awkward dynamic, to have to live with your partner's mother without you being present. So I'm excited to read this one. The next book is This Time Next Year by Sophie Cousins, and the blurb on this one is how many chances to meet your perfect match. And I really like this one, the pink and the blue and the white. It's a really pretty cover. This book is about two characters, Minnie and Quinn, and they were born on the same day, New Year's Day 1990. Minnie feels like Quinn has gotten all of the fortune, and they cross paths again on their 30th birthday, and I'm sure that a romance is going to ensue. I'm really interested in this. Feels kind of like Fated Mates type of book, contemporary romance. The next one is A Pretty Little Wife by Darby Kane, and this appears to be a domestic thriller about a wife's husband who goes missing, and it's linked to some students in a college that have also gone missing, and she is the last one to have seen her husband's body, but then she can't find his body, and then everybody is missing her husband, who appears to have been a teacher. So I'm wondering exactly what's going to happen in terms of whether she's guilty or not. I really am trying to get into more thrillers, especially domestic thrillers, and I think this will be a great place to start. This sounds like it's going to be really interesting, especially if she's seen the body and then all of a sudden the body disappears. That means that someone else took the body, which I'm intrigued to find out. And the last one that I have here is the one that I am super excited for. This is one of my most anticipated releases for this year, and I was so excited to see that it was included in this month's box, and that is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. And this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling that takes place in 1920s Shanghai. If you did not know, I am a huge fan of Romeo and Juliet. So to see this redone and told in form of rival gangs just makes me super happy. Honestly, probably when I'm done filming this video, I will immediately start this book. But I'm so happy to see that this was included. This cover is absolutely gorgeous, especially with the sword here, and knowing the significance of that to Romeo and Juliet, and the roses, and then the dragon. So great pick. I'm excited to read all of these. So thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. Like I said, if you're interested in getting your first box for $9.99, make sure you check out the website and the code and everything that will be linked down in the description box below. So the first one is one that I actually read last year, and this is Glow Girl by M. Weidenbenner. I believe I'm saying her last name right, and I believe that this one only has like 4 ratings on Goodreads, and I am one of them. So that should tell you something. This is one that I ended up reading as an advanced reader copy through a blog tour, and I really enjoyed it. It is a YA science fiction / dystopian book that focuses on these community of individuals that are able to have special powers. They're like droids, I believe is what the term is that she uses, and they are not accepted within their community. They are looked down upon. Whenever a child shows any type of abilities like that, the parents try to suppress it because they end up getting targeted. They are victims of hate crimes, and I thought it was a very interesting dynamic dynamic considering the climate that we're in here in this country in terms of being outside of the typical WASP community. So I really do think that this was well written. I believe that the author told me that this is going to be part of a series because that was part of my questions because of the way that it ended. And I think that she said it is going to be, but I haven't heard anything since then. I don't know if she's going to independently publish it, so we'll see. But this book reminded me heavily of like X-Men, like the kids who had like these special powers and the community was really afraid of the powers because they didn't understand them. It's kind of that same concept, and I never got the chance to ask her if she was possibly inspired by X-Men, but I thought it was a pretty decent read. And if you're looking for a new YA science fiction / dystopian book to check out, I would recommend that one. The next one that I have here is one that I also read last year, and this is a middle grade horror book, and it is Grimworld by Avery Murray, and I was also given this one for review. And this is about a boy named Henry who lives in this weird different town world. I think it's in our world. It's kind of hard to tell, but there are some aspects of it that make it otherworldly, but then there are aspects of it that make it kind of familiar. And this is a story about how he ends up meeting this creature, or getting lured into meeting this creature in a cemetery because he wanted this comic book. He's obsessed with comics, and what ends up happening is that he actually gets cursed, for lack of a better term, where he ends up with this clock that's like attached to his body, and when the clock runs out, people die. So he ends up meeting someone else, another kid in the town who's like that, and they're racing against time, trying to figure out who is putting these clocks on people and stealing basically their livelihood. When I say livelihood, I essentially mean like the years that they have left may be going to someone else. So I thought that this was great. I wanted a little bit more world building in this one, but for the most part I thought it was really good. So if you're looking for an independently published middle grade spooky book, I would recommend picking up Grimworld. So the next one that I have on this list, I'm hoping that by the time this video goes up, because I'm pre-filming right now, I'm hoping that by the time this goes up, more of y'all have actually heard of this book and that I've already talked about it on my channel, like doing a wrap up or something. But it is Daughters of Jubilation by Cara Lee Cawthron, and this is a southern fantasy that takes place during the Jim Crow era South, and it takes place in South Carolina, I believe. I could be wrong about my placement there, but I believe it does. And it is about a young girl by the name of Eveline. She's 16, and she is starting to exhibit these powers, and the powers eventually are called the Jube, and it's passed down from generation to generation, and she doesn't know why she's been gifted these powers. And throughout the course of the book, you learn why she has the powers, and it's not what you think. And it was so good to me because I think I went in expecting this like huge fantastical thing, but it almost felt a little bit like it was contemporary. So it wasn't otherworldly, it wasn't taking place in a different world, it was our world, but the powers were very important to Black people, and that's all I'm going to say because I don't want to spoil it. But I think that this one is going to be interesting because it's a very sex positive book. There is sex on page, and it is handled as if it is a normality. It's not anything that's like, oh my gosh, they're having sex. It's not like that. It is a great opportunity for Eva and her mother to have a conversation about sex and having protected sex and being mindful of having sex. And even though it's like that conversation like, oh, you know, like I really don't want you having sex, but if you are having sex, this is what I need you to do. So I love that. We need a lot more YA books that are sex positive and don't shy away from having conversations about sex. So I really like that element. I like the magic system. It was very interesting. It's something that I have not seen done in YA yet. So if you're looking for something that's different in terms of magic system, the purpose of the magic will blow your mind. It blew my mind and hurt my feelings at the same time, but it's definitely understandable why the author took it to that place. It made me cry at the end. literally made me cry. It takes a lot to make me cry in books, and this one did make me cry. I think that too, it's an interesting setting because it takes place in Jim Crow South, which I haven't seen done yet. And I described this book to my dad, and my dad was like, I want a copy for Christmas. And he's not a reader. So if that tells you anything, you definitely should be checking this book out. The next one that I have here is Mononoke Sharing, and this is a manga series that I was surprised didn't have more ratings. But this is really a story just about a girl that has roommates and they do some wild stuff because they're demons. So I actually did a first impressions on the first volume of this, so I'll make sure I leave that in the card symbol above. But I think that more people should explore this if you're interested in manga at all. I think this is an interesting one to read. It's quite a bit of fan service-ish stuff involved in this, as you can see just from the cover alone, if you can see that close. But it is one that I did enjoy. It has some really interesting antics between the roommates, and it is just interesting. So this is volume 2 that I have not read yet, but I am anticipating reading this one soon, and I am hoping that by the time this video goes up I will have already read volume. The next group of books that I want to include on this list is the Fly Girl series by Ashley Woodfolk. So I think that quite a few people may have heard of this, but this has under 1,000 ratings on Goodreads. Both of them do. And I recently read both the first book and the second book as arcs. I've talked about Lux, which is the first one, I believe, in like my September wrap up, I think. And by the time this goes up, I will have already talked about Manga, which is the second book, in my October wrap up. So I really enjoyed the first one. The second one not as much as the first one, but I think as a whole, I think this is going to be a decent series just about a group of 4 black girls that are friends that have their own personal issues, and we get to see highlights of their personal issues in their separate books. These are also high-low books, meaning that they're books that are high interest with low difficulty for struggling readers, reluctant readers. So students or kids that are not reading on grade level but are interested in topics like these that are super applicable to their life, but they're written at a reading level that is perfect for them. So I'm always a huge advocate for high-low books because they're just important for readers who are becoming stronger readers, or kids that don't necessarily like to read, or they need a little bit more assistance and you don't want them to be embarrassed by what they're reading. Like if you have a 9th grader that is only reading at like a 6th grade reading level, they're not going to want to walk around their high school with a middle grade book. They just, socially, it's probably going to be embarrassing and people are going to think that they're not as intelligent as them, which is not true. So I definitely am a huge advocate for high-low books. So I hope that more people end up checking these books out and that people realize that they are high-low and they don't criticize the writing for that purpose. But if you haven't heard of the Lux series, I definitely would recommend checking them out if you're looking for a new YA contemporary book that features black girls as the main characters. The next one that I have on this list is actually a nonfiction book, and it is Conversations in Black by Ed Gordon. This is also one that I've talked about on this channel, but I haven't really seen talked about a lot in the booktube community. This is a book that focuses on issues within the black community, and they're all discussed from different viewpoints. There are celebrities, there are political analysts, there are activists, there are politicians, there are members and founders from the Black Lives Matter movement, and they take different issues related to the black community, such as the presidency and voting, as far as Black Girl Magic, meaning like how black women are treated, black men are, economics as a black community. They touch on quite a few things, and it's just a continuation of answers. I almost want to say short stories, but it's not short stories. It's a continuation of questions and answers. And what's interesting about this is that in the conversations you can see people disagreeing and agreeing with each other and kind of not combating, but really giving different perspectives and viewpoints of how they view the black community in relationship to these topics. And what I love about that is that it reinforces the fact that the Black community is not a monolith. We don't all think the same. We don't all believe that the Black communities should move in certain directions. We all have our different visions of how we think the Black community can be successful. I think it was even interesting to see those who have been involved in advocating for the Black community for a long time, like hearing from perspectives of like Al Sharpton, and then hearing from younger individuals who have not been activists for as long as people like Al Sharpton. So it's interesting. I have done a full review on this one, which I will link in the card symbol above. The next one that I have is actually a short story compilation, and this is You Too by Janet Bertler. I know a couple people have read this, but it never did become a huge thing in the booktube community, which is interesting because it is a YA nonfiction book that focuses on short stories and nonfiction. Of course, these are just stories about people's experiences in relationship to the Me Too movement. So this is people just talking about how they have found their own voices in the Me Too movement and their own personal stories of how they may have been sexually assaulted or raped and how that has affected their life. Some of these stories were very, very powerful. I mean, all of them were very, very powerful. Some of them just hit me really, really hard. And I think there were even a couple stories in there that were written by men. So understanding too that the Me Too movement and talking about sexual assault and rape is not only applicable to women, although women are affected more, that this does happen to men as well. And I think that it was just a good short story compilation, and I was hoping that it would be one that more people would talk about. So it is triggering in some aspects. So if any of that content, as far as like Me Too movement, talking about sexual assault, rape, there are some stories in there that are related to incest, I would not recommend checking this out if it's going to be triggering for you, but it is well worth a read to gain some different perspectives from people from all over the country. The next one that I have on this list is Still I Rise by Ronald and Tanisha Laird. This is a nonfiction graphic novel that chronicles the struggles and accomplishments of the Black community here in the United States from the time of slavery up into whatever modern period. I think it's the 2000s in this book because this was published a while ago. I think I read this one back in like 2014 or 2015, and I really enjoyed it. It takes its title, of course, from the poem by Maya Angelou, Still I Rise. So it is, of course, a in-depth look at Black history. And if you're looking at a way to learn Black history, of course this is not extensive, it's not going to give you every aspect of Black history, but if you're looking at an introduction into Black history and you want a different format to consume it in, I think that using a graphic novel as a tool can help you at a starting place, and this is a good place to start. So I do recommend this one. I think when I read this a while ago, I ended up giving it 4 stars. So it's been a while since I read it, and matter of fact, I think at this point the book is out of print, so you may have to go to a secondhand source in order to acquire a copy of it, because I don't think anybody's really selling it anymore. Now the next one that I have here is The Skeleton Stuffs a Stocking by Lee Perry, which is I believe this might be the 9th book. I can't remember which one this is, but this is a book in the Family Skeleton Mystery series. I enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this, y'all. I did not know what to think. I was contacted last year to review this one, and I was like, oh yeah, cozy mystery. And what's so cool about this one is that it is a cozy mystery featuring a skeleton as the main character. I thought that was such an interesting twist, and I thought that it was super unique that the author decided to use that as a feature of this series. So for this one, it is just about a character by the name of Georgia, and the skeleton's name is Sid, and they solve mysteries together. I don't want to talk too much about it because, like I said, this is like the 9th book in the series. I don't know, it's somewhere up in the numbers, and I read it out of order, so I need to go back and read the first one. But if you just have never checked out this series, if you're looking for another cozy mystery series to read, I definitely would recommend checking this out. Next I have 2 middle grade graphic novels, and these are The Secret Spiral of Swamp Kid, excuse me, I just tore that whole thing up. Let's just try that again. This is The Secret Spiral of Swamp Kid by Kurt Scroggs. And the next one that I have is Antihero, and this one was written by Kate Quinn and Demetria Lunetta. So these are part of what DC has been doing with their DC Zoom series, meaning that they have been producing middle grade graphic novels of some of the characters that we normally find in the DC comics and making them accessible to middle grade readers. This is great if you have any young ones in your life, middle grade readers, or if you want to get started on reading some more graphic novels, or you're interested in middle grade graphic novels. These are really good. I think that the artwork in these that I have read has been really enjoyable, and it introduces you to some of the DC characters without having to really do all the legwork of sifting through the backlog of DC comics. I think that middle grade students absolutely love these. I have a few more, like 5, 6, 7 more on my shelf, and I just got sent another one. So these are great. I think that they are amazing, and like I said, the artwork in these are great. So the next one that I have is a middle grade book, which is companion to another book, and that is Saving Kabul Corner by N.H. Sensei. And this is companion to the book Shooting Kabul, and I don't know if you have to read them in order, but I think you see some characters from Shooting Kabul and Saving Kabul Corner, because I read Saving Kabul Corner. I still haven't read Shooting Kabul. And this book focuses on a young girl by the name of Ariana, who is living with her now cousin Layla, who just came from Afghanistan, and she doesn't really get along well with her cousin because her cousin is the epitome of what they expect Afghan girls to be, and she is not. And Layla also gets along very, very well with Ariana's best friend, and she just doesn't like it. But then what ends up happening is that there is a rival Afghan store that opens up, and it brings up this feud that has been happening for ages since everyone came to America from Afghanistan, and it is very, very volatile, and they have to figure out a way to stop it before everyone's businesses gets ruined anyway. I think this has some very good and very important conversations about Afghan culture and traditions and the experience of being from Afghanistan and being here in America and transitioning from being an immigrant from one country to another. I read this one a while ago, but I do remember really, really enjoying it, and I do need to pick up Shooting Kabul. Like, I don't know why I haven't read it yet, but I do need to pick it up. But I literally have heard no one talk about this book on BookTube, so if you're looking for a diverse middle grade read, I definitely would check this one out. And the last one that I'm going to include on this list is The Dare by Holly LaRue. This is a dark romance that I read this year that surprised me because this one has a lot of content warnings, like a lot of content warnings for like knife play and boot play and CNC and some other elements that are very interesting, and I didn't think that I was going to like it because there were some elements in terms of the sexual relationship that happens between the two main characters that I didn't think I would personally engage in. But seeing it on page and reading it like in a fantasy setting, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, like this is good. Like, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I probably enjoyed it more than what people think I should have enjoyed it, but I thought it was really good. And it's just essentially about this girl who ends up going to this college party, and she was not necessarily horrible to this guy, but this guy was kind of like an outcast when he was in high school. But of course, you know, after high school things change, and they make a dare, and she gets turned on by some things that he says and he does, and she's very surprised at it, and she has to be subservient to him for the rest of the night at the party, and that leads them to doing some very interesting things. I love the consent in this book because they do get extreme. There are some pretty extreme things in here, but I love that no matter what happened, he always would stop and make sure that she was okay with what was going on, and he would remind her, if you ever get to a point where enough is enough, remember your safety word. So I like that element of it. It just was like, oh, okay, I can dig this. I like it. So it was a shocker for this year, but I did really enjoy it. All right, y'all, so in the comments below, let me know about some titles that you think are not really talked about here in the booktube community, or ones that just seem to fly under everyone's radar. I would love to pick up some more of those titles. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button. If you're looking for ways to support my channel or ways to follow me on social media, all of my links will be down in the description box below. I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, whatever, wherever you are. And I'll be back with another video soon.